and Judson, A Missionary Life for Burma by Sharon James. Chapter 17, War Clouds Gather, 1824. For the Judsons to proceed to Ava with war about to break out was, with hindsight, a terrible mistake. In a later era, they would certainly have been ordered home by their sending agency. The communications were so slow as to be almost meaningless, and they were left to make their own decisions. Bad news greeted them when they disembarked at Ava. Dr. Jonathan Price said that he and all other foreigners were out of favor. There had been a turnover of personnel at court. Those who had favored the missionaries no longer had much influence. To add to their troubles, the hut that Adoniram had built was not fit to live in. Price's house was so damp that even a few hours spent there brought Anne out in a fever. The Judsons had no option but to stay on the boat until the better shelter could be built on the land that they had leased. This took 2 weeks. When it was completed, Adoniram and Anne settled in and made it home. Anne wrote to her parents from Ava on February 10th of 1824. On our arrival at Ava, we had more difficulties to encounter, such as we had never before experienced. We had no home, no house to shelter us from the burning sun by day and the cold dews at night. Dr. Price had kindly met us on the way and urged our taking residence with him, but his house was in such an unfinished state that the walls so damp, of brick and just built, that spending 2 or 3 hours threw me into a fever, and induced me to feel that it would be presumptuous to remain longer. We had but one alternative: to remain in the boat till we could build a small house on the spot of ground which the king gave Mr. Judson last year. And you will hardly believe it possible, for I almost doubt my senses, that in just a fortnight from our arrival we moved into a house built in that time, and which is sufficiently large to make us comfortable. It is in a most delightful situation, out of the dust of the town, and on the bank of the river. The spot of ground given by His Majesty is small, being only 120 feet long and 75 feet wide. But it's our own, and is the most healthy situation I have seen. Our house is raised 4 feet from the ground, and consists of 3 small rooms and a veranda. I hardly know how we shall bear the hot season, which is just commencing, as our house is built of boards, and before night it heats like an oven. Nothing but bricks is a shelter from the heat of Ava, where the thermometer, even in the shade, frequently rises to 108 degrees. We have worship every evening in Burman, when a number of the natives assemble, and every Sabbath Mr. Judson preaches the other side of the river, in Dr. Price's house. We feel it an inestimable privilege that amid all of our discouragements we have the language and are able constantly to communicate truth, which can save the soul. My female school has already commenced, with 3 little girls who are learning to read, sew, etc., and 2 of them are sisters, and we have named them Mary and Abby Hasseltine. One of them is to be supported with the money which the Judson Association of Bradford Academy had engaged to collect. They are fine children, and improve as rapidly as any children in the world. Their mother's deranged, and their father gave them to me to educate, so that I have been at no expense for them except their food and clothes. I've already begun to make inquiries for children, and doubt not we shall be directed in regard to our school. I have not yet been at the palace, the royal family all being absent. They returned to Amarapura a day or so after our arrival, where they will remain till the new palace in the city is finished. Then they will take possession in usual form, and Ava in future will be their residence. My old friend, the lady of Viceroy of Rangoon, who died in my absence, came to the boat to see me immediately on being informed of my arrival. All her power and distinction ceased at the death of her husband, and she is now only a private woman. She is, however, a very sensible woman, and there is much more hope of her attending to the subject of religion now than when in public life. I intend to visit her frequently, and make it an object to fix her attention to the subject. In consequence of war with the Bengal government, foreigners are not so much esteemed at court as formerly. I know not what effect this war will have on our mission, but we must leave the event with Him who has hitherto directed us. Their situation was vulnerable in the extreme, and yet they do not seem to have realized the danger. Anne was very optimistic when she wrote to Josiah Butterworth on February 16th of 1824. In a day or two after our arrival, Mr. Judson introduced me to Price, M., and his princess. They treated us with the greatest kindness. The princess took me into her inner apartment, made me a handsome present, and invited me to visit her frequently, ordered her cart to be prepared to convey me home. Prince M. is intelligent, desirous of obtaining foreign information, and has for some time been examining the Christian religion. Oh, that a merciful God would enlighten his mind and make him a real disciple of the blessed Redeemer. I hope to gain some influence over the princess and induce her to read the New Testament, which is now in her own language. She is surrounded at all times by 20 or 30 females, and who knows but religious conversation may be blessed to them, though the princess herself should never be benefited. We have here an uncommon field for usefulness, and if we may only be allowed to remain, there is no doubt but much good would be done. My health has been much improved during my voyages, and I begin to hope that I may last yet some years. But we are, in a literal sense, alone. We have not half the means of obtaining intelligence from our friends as when in Rangoon, and as for society, it is so far out of the question that we hardly think of mentioning it. Dr. Price is our only missionary associate, but he has married a native wife and lives on the other side of the river. Mr. Judson preaches every Sabbath in the doctor's house, where he has something of a congregation. We also have worship in Burman every evening in our house, so that a faint ray of light is beginning to appear in this dark city. Remember me most affectionately to whose likeness is now hanging before me, and is almost the only ornament in our little house. Pray kindly write a line to Miss H. of Liverpool, and inform her that the box of articles she forwarded arrived just as I was leaving Calcutta. They were most acceptable, as we have daily occasion for distributing them. Say also I have intended writing to her very soon. Do not forget to pray for your most affectionate friend, A. H. Hudson. Incredibly, even when news broke of the British invasion of Rangoon in May of 1824, the Judsons and Price remained in Ava. During the invasion of Rangoon, the Burmese had imprisoned Wade and Hugh, but on taking control, the English had ordered the release of all prisoners. Jonathan Wade wrote to the missionaries in Calcutta on May 15th of 1824. It has been between 2 and 3 months since we have received any letter from Mr. Judson or Dr. Price. It's impossible to predict their fate. We tremble whenever we think of them. We can only pray that God, who has delivered us out of the hands of our cruel enemies, may deliver them also. The Hughes and the Wades returned to Bengal. While full-scale war raged between the Burmese and the British, all white-skinned foreigners were immediately suspect. The short-term prospects for missions were bleak. In the long term, it was clear that the missionaries that if Burma was defeated by the British and a protectorate set up, then the way would be wide open for Christian mission to resume. From May of 1824 onwards, army after army sent out by the Burmese government was defeated by the British. The bewilderment and fury of the Burmese government was intense. They had regarded their armies as invincible. Some treachery must lie behind the disaster. There must be spies at work for the British. Suspicion fell upon all foreigners, and the missionaries were doomed. For nearly 2 years there was no news of the Judsons or Price. Their friends and family feared the worst. At least it was heard that the British army had advanced within 40 miles of the capital. The King of Burma realized that further resistance was futile, and that unless peace was made, Ava itself would be occupied. He was forced to cede a large portion of Burma to the British, promise a huge amount of money, and hand over all foreign prisoners. The Judsons and Price arrived at the British camp February 24th, 1826. But what had happened to them in the intervening 2 years?